Hey everyone, this is Corinne Lafont, your favorite radio host, your only radio host, and favorite girl, of course. Broadcasting to you from the lovely island of Trinidad and Tobago in the Caribbean on Between the Lines. And I start my show off with gratitude every time, or some people will say thankfulness. Yes, just being thankful. I'm thankful to be above ground, to see another day, to be able to impact lives, to share a little wisdom or nugget with you on my show and to expose you to more persons doing fabulous work out there. So I have with me Clyde McCulley. Yes, and let me tell you a bit about him. But before I do, we're talking about stories of the segregated South of the 1940s and 50s. He lives in the USA. Let me repeat that. Stories of the segregated South of the 40s and 50s. And Clyde McCulley was a college professor of art until his retirement when he began writing books. That's a great way to start your retirement. His memoirs, The Boy on Shady Grove Road, are a collection of 100 stories from his early years in the conservative, segregated South of the 40s and 50s. His second book, Panther Creek Mountain, is about fun, adventures, and frightening experiences of two brothers and their girl cousin growing up in a log cabin in the 1950s on a wild mountain ridge in the Appalachian Mountains. So welcome, Clyde, to Between the Lines.
Well, thank you very much. I mean, appreciate being here.
Yes, it's great to have you. I'm thinking about it. I don't think I've ever had in my years of doing my show anybody talking about the segregated South. You know, it's a topic that most people don't talk about.
Yeah.
And I am so honored to be able to have you on my show to share that because I live in the Caribbean and it's only what we see or hear on TV or what has been perpetuated in the media through movies
Right.
or news stories or books, let's say, you know, or images even. But you have lived it, and it's always great to hear stories from persons who actually come from that era and area and environment and to be able to share it. And you are sharing it through stories, through your books, which we will feature a little bit later, all the different storybooks that you have. But give us a bit of background of the segregated South of the 40s and 50s. That's before I was born. Give us a bit of history lesson.
Yes, that was way before you were. That's way before you were born. Well, I know. I think about 65 or 70 years ago. It's quite a while back, and yet doesn't seem that way because I'm going to be 79 next week. So
Nice.
yeah. So anyway, I was born in a little town in Arkansas. Arkansas is in the South. It's not the deep South. That would be Alabama, Mississippi, and Georgia and those states. But I was raised in Arkansas, which is also considered a southern state. And we were raised in a very conservative area as far as religion goes. And the people were very religious, fundamentalists in many ways, lots of Baptists, lots of those, kinds of religions. So I was raised in that type of religion. And yet we were totally segregated as far as the schools went. We had a small town, a town of about 10,000 people in my day. And there was the whites were on the north side of the railroad track, and we didn't call them blacks then, we called them coloreds in those days. We're on the south side.
What did you call it? Colored. Yeah.
Yeah, colored. Yes, we called them colored in those days. They lived on the south side of the track. And I remember my dad said, now you don't ever want to go over there because it could be dangerous. You'd be in a white boy over there. And it's kind of hard for me to understand that in a way. And
that's kind of hard. That's kind of hard for me to understand as a black person. I'm like, what could happen to you, really?
Well, what I found, I just read a couple of things here to you. It said my father and my mother were both born in the South. They learned Southern traditions and did not question them. Neither of my parents had gone beyond the 8th grade in school, which was the case with a lot of poor white people in those days. And my father would use the N-word, without a thought as to what he was saying.
Wow.
My mother had more respect, I think due to her church influence. So she used the word Negra, thinking that was more respectful.
Yeah.
As a kid, I always thought we should use the word colored. I would hear a lot of the black people, as we call them now, or African American, and we call them now, would say, well, we're colored. And so I think that's the way they thought of it. But our churches were segregated, the schools were segregated, the in the South, the drinking fountains were segregated, the bathrooms were segregated. It was almost unbelievable. And so that's what I grew up in. But what I was going to say was it was a very simple way of thinking for these people. And I think that people are taught that traditions are sacred without thoughts as to where they originated. This was the way it was in the South in the 1940s and early 50s. But times were starting to change, and quickly. So, you know, I lived through an age of seeing this thing where it was total segregation to where then later on the schools started being integrated, which caused a lot of trouble in the South, as you know. And so I went through that whole thing. But as a child, I had a hard time understanding a lot of these things. I had questions. I remember that, and these are in my book, The Boy on Shady Grove Road. One time we saw a truckload of Mexicans that were, they would come from Mexico every year up through Arkansas on their way up to Michigan to pick cherries. And so my buddy Kenny and I were down at the gas station one day, a little gas station, and we were buying a soda or a Coke or cold drink, we called them in those days. And so we saw this truckload of Mexicans come up, and they asked the owner of the little filling station, they said, "We're going to get gas, but we'd like to know if we can go to your bathroom." And he said, "Oh no," he said, "Mexicans can't go to my bathroom. You can go out in the woods out back." And so we saw this, we watched this, and we thought, now they're not colored, they're in between, and how come he won't let them go to the bathroom? So anyway, so so we tried to talk to the kids. Of course, some of them, they were Mexicans and they couldn't talk to us, and we couldn't talk to them either. But after they all got back in the truck and left, we asked him, "Why wouldn't you let them go to the bathroom?" He said, "Well," he said, "I have to protect my business, and people would see them coming in here and using my bathroom." And he said, the neighbors would all stop buying gasoline from me if they saw that. So, you know, so he felt he had a purpose and a reason for doing that. Well, Kenny and I didn't feel right about that. So we went home and asked my daddy. We said, "Daddy, why is it that these Mexican people couldn't use a bathroom? And why is it that only whites have the right to go to restrooms and drinking fountains and so forth, but the colored people don't?" And my daddy said, "Well, there's a lot of good examples of whites in the Bible," he said. And he didn't know the Bible real well, but this is what he thought. He says that we are made in God's image, and he is white. And then he said, Adam and Eve were white, as well as Noah and King David and Solomon and John the Baptist and Jesus too. And Jesus too. And then he said, they say Jesus was a Jew, but we can live with that. He was pretty white. He said none of them were in the Bible were colored. Now, see, that was his honest to God belief. He never had that proven to him in any way. He never asked beyond that because, unfortunately, these people were ignorant. They were taught these traditions and simply believed them. Well, we said, we still questioned my daddy. He said, "Well, I know that I don't know what to tell you other than that." He said, "There's nothing much to say except that they were no men in the Bible were anything but white." And he said, "Even Santa Claus is white, whether you kids still believe in him or not," he said. So this was his simple, ridiculous, kind of stupid now as you look back on it, way of thinking. But this is kind of the way they felt. And Kenny and I realized after seeing that day that we were really lucky that we had been born white because we could drink out of any drinking fountain we wished to, and that's how simple it seemed to be. My daddy did believe, though, and this is interesting, in that he had a few black men, colored men as we call them, that he liked, and he considered them his friend. And so I asked him about this one day, and he said, "Well," he said, I do have a couple of men that I like. He said, one of them works for the Ford dealer in town. His name is Hot. And he said, I like him. And he said, I would even have him and his wife, he said, his wife over to have dinner at our house sometime. And he said, and I like Tom. He's a good man. These were both black people. But see, the thing was, and this is something I learned later. In fact, I learned this from a good friend of mine, a black man that taught in a college where I did. and he was from Trinidad, by the way.
Oh,
And
yeah.
his name was Holly. Holly, that's all I'll call him, Holly, at this moment. And I asked him one time, he said to me, he said, "You grew up in the South, didn't you?" I said, "Yes." We were teaching up in Washington State, by the way, at that time. And he said, "You grew up in the South?" And I said, "Yes." He said, "Well," he said, "do you ever have any trouble figuring out the age of Black women when you see them?" I said, "Gosh, I hadn't really thought of it, Holly, but I don't really know." He said, "Well, you know, I can figure out the age of white men, but I can't figure out the age of white women." He said, "I can't figure out why that is." I said, "Well, I don't know what that is either." So we started talking about segregation and integration and so forth. And he said to me, he said, "Well, you know, I've lived in the South and I've lived in the North, but," he said, "to tell you the truth," he said, "I feel more comfortable living in the South as a Black man than I do living in the North." And I said, "Why is that?" He said, "Well," he said, "in the South, the Southerners will claim they don't like the race." He said, some of them even say they hate the race, but they like the Black individual. And he said, in the North, they like the race, but they don't like the Black individual. And he said, "I feel more comfortable living in an area where I know they don't like my race, but they like me as their next door neighbor, where I don't feel that way living in the North." So I always thought that was kind of interesting, because I never thought about that before I met Holly from Trinidad. And he was, you know, he has his PhD and he was teaching up here at a college where I taught.
That's interesting. The thing
Yeah.
about it, if I can interject here, based on what
Pardon?
I've been hearing you saying, is that, you know, Black people, I don't know if whites have and others have acknowledged it or understand, but Black people are not inherently racist. We don't see race. We don't know what racist means.
I know.
We don't see color. A black we the Black race, probably that's why they call us coloreds, because we are such different hues of Black.
Yes.
We can
Right.
range from the blackest to the whitest.
That's right. Isn't that
You
true?
can be white, you can look white to somebody, but you're actually Black.
Yes, that's right. And you know, I've always found it interesting, Corinne, that you can be a mixed race. You can have a white parent and a Black parent, but you're always considered Black. Isn't that
Yes,
interesting?
a Black.
You're not considered white with a little Black in you. You're always considered Black with a little white in you.
No, you're just Black.
Yeah, I know.
There's
I
no
know.
in between. There's no in between. Like you said, the Mexicans. You're one. Because
Yeah.
how would you treat an in between? You could say, okay, half of you, which half of you could use the bathroom? Which half of you cannot use the bathroom?
Yes, that's right.
Or
Exactly.
do you get to pee half of the pee and you hold back on half of the pee? Which part of the pee is Black? Which
Yeah,
part of the pee is white? I'm
that's
like,
right.
it is
I know.
so ridiculous. I mean, the ignorance of that is so ridiculous.
I know. I know. I
I,
know.
I, I
But
just find it amazing. So I'm listening to you and I'm laughing and I'm like, God, could I live in such an era? The Lord knows why He made me born in the Caribbean. Why I wasn't born in the 40s and 50s and living in that time? Because it is so ridiculous.
it is totally ridiculous. Well, for instance, uh, my dad, whenever he would listen to early morning radio in those days, and there was a station in our little town, and they'd have 15 minutes of country music or something playing, and then they would have a radio evangelist come on. It was called his name was Brother Euler, and he would come on for a 15-minute show, and he would preach and preach, and excuse me, and then he would say, now, you know, he was a kind of a faith healer too, I suppose you'd say, and he would say, now, if you take out your handkerchief and lay it over your radio right now, I'm gonna pray and bless your handkerchief, and then you put it over your rheumatism or your headache or whatever pain you have, and you know, Lord will help heal this problem. But he said, if you really want God's help, put a $5 bill in an envelope and send it to Brother Mueller in care of this station, you know, and I will pray over it, and and you will have healing. But if you really want God's special care, sorry, he said, send your handkerchief in to me in an envelope with a $10 bill, and I will put it over my own Bible and pray over it and send it back to you, and you will have special healing. Well, my dad said, oh, that's just a bunch of BS. He said, that preacher's not an evangelist. He's a holy roller preacher, he called it. I don't know if you know what holy roller means. But that means kind of a Pentecostal type,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
more emotional.
Yeah.
Sorry. So my dad would said, but you know, if I had a $5 bill, I might just put it in an envelope and send it to him. But he said, the only thing is that Brother Mueller, oh, it kind of sounds like a black man to me. And he said, I'd have to have a photograph, a Kodak, we call him mostly. I'd have to have a Kodak picture of him first to make sure he wasn't black before I'd send him this $5 bill. See, that's how prejudiced my daddy was.
Yeah.
He would not accept the Lord's healing if it came from a black man.
Yeah. Yeah.
Isn't that
yeah.
amazing?
But
I'm
remember,
sorry.
he told Jesus is white, Santa is white, Moses is white, Abraham is white. Everybody he thought was white. So he's not going to accept anything else. But
right.
you know, Clyde, all of this is emanating from fear.
Fear. That's exactly right.
That is what it is. It is just fear and ignorance and not having an open mind to understand.
Yeah.
Because really, I mean, coming back to the point of Mexicans, they are black. Mexicans would align themselves with black. People,
That's
right. They don't align themselves with white.
That's right.
What it is.
That's exactly right.
Latinos would never associate themselves with white. Never.
That's right.
That is how they are all over the world.
Yeah. Well, I really believe that. I'm not sure how much time I have, so you'll have to help me.
No, you keep talking.
Okay. But I was going to tell you another little story, and this is all from one chapter in my book called "The Colored Situation," and it's one of the small chapters. But anyway, one time I was my aunt in Memphis, which is about 150 miles from where I live in Arkansas. She invited me to come. I was 8 years old. She invited me to come and stay with them for a week in Memphis. And so I was all excited. And my mother wanted to put me on the bus, the Greyhound bus. So she put me down on the Greyhound bus. I was very nervous about it because sure someone was going to kidnap me or something on the way. But anyway, she talked to the bus driver, and he assured her that he would take care of me. And when we had the rest stop along the way, he would take me in and buy me a sandwich and so forth. So anyway, I got on the bus, and all the white people started getting on the bus. They were all smiling to me with big smiles, and I thought that was really nice. And then after all the white people got on, the black people started getting on, the colored. And so I'd smile at them, and they'd smile back at me. And I thought, they have such beautiful white teeth. How is it that black people have such white teeth and white people have yellow teeth? Now, that's the way I saw it. It was so weird. See, you have beautiful teeth, white teeth, thanks to your photograph here on my screen.
Yes. And thank you.
So anyway, I was watching, and I thought, well, why don't they sit up next to us? But they all went to the back of the bus.
That's right.
Went to the back of the bus to sit. And I noticed a little boy about my age, he passed by us as he was going in. So when they got sat down, I motioned for him, and I said, why don't you come up here? Come up here. Come up and sit with me. Mm-hmm. Well, he looked at his mama, and she said, no. Can't do it. You can't do it. So he had to shake his head no to me. And it really upset me because I thought, now, why can he not come up here and sit with me? Well, there was a reason. Of course, you know what finally happened in Alabama when Miss Parks tried to sit, or did sit in the white section of the bus. So anyway, this was before that, though. This was still in the 50s. You see, early 50s when this happened. And so, we went on riding through, and when we got to the rest stop, to where we all had to get off the bus, everybody went into the restaurant to go to the bathroom, get something to eat. As soon as we got inside, I'm sorry, I have COPD. I don't have the flu, I promise. But anyway, I have pulmonary fibrosis. When I talk too much, it causes me.
I don't think we could catch it through.
You can't get it over the screen, no. But, horrible stuff. But anyway.
Take your time. Take your time. We have the whole evening if you want. You take your time.
So anyway, we went into the bus station. When I got in there, I need to get a drink of water, and then I saw a white fountain, about 2 feet on the other side of it, another fountain, and over the top of one of them it said whites, and over the top of the other one it said colored only. It didn't say whites only; it said whites and then colored only. And so I thought, and then I looked at the restrooms, and there was a door, men, white men only, colored men only, white women only, colored women only. There were two different, in other words, everybody had two different bathrooms, different drinking fountains.
Mm-hmm.
So then we went in to sit down to eat. And I thought, well, what's this going to be like? So on one side there were kind of the stoves and everything out in the middle. On one side, the whites sat at their counter. It said whites only. And on the other side of the other side of the stove was a sign that said, colored only. And so, but what was interesting to me was that there were all colored people doing all the cooking in the middle. Now they could let them cook for them, but they couldn't let them sit with them. And you probably have heard about slavery in the South and how many of the white women would have the black women suckle their babies, have them nurse them and so forth. So anyway, we went through all that, and then we got back on the bus. And as we were going across the Arkansas Delta, which is flatlands down along the Mississippi River, I would see fields of people picking cotton out in the fields, and they were colored people. They were both men and women and children, and they were building these large white bag sacks behind them, and they were picking the cotton and putting it into these sacks, pushing it down. And of course, there was a white man standing at the wagon. Everybody had to bring their sacks up to empty. He would weigh them and empty them. And as we went along there, I also saw that there were a lot of little wooden shacks along the road where these people lived. And you could literally see through the cracks in the boards between, they had no insulation. There were cracks in the wall, boards with space in between them, but you could see the light shining through. And I thought, we are poor. My folks were very poor. We didn't have running water. We didn't have electricity till I was 7 years old. We had outhouses, what we call outhouse. You know what that is, outdoor toilet?
Yes.
Yeah. We had outdoor toilets right up through high school with me. And so we were poor. I remember one time I said to my dad, I said, Daddy, we're poor, aren't we? He's kind of glared at me and he said, son, we're not poor. We're just a little short on cash. and he said, don't you ever say we're poor again. He said, remember, he said, the people down the road named the Johnsons. He said, they are poor, much poorer than we are. He said, you have bologna sandwiches for lunch. He said, their kids have to eat mustard and sugar sprinkle on mustard and white bread. He said, you have bologna. And bologna, I don't know if you know what bologna is. Bologna is the cheapest meat you can buy in the state. You don't want to know what it's made of. It's kind of like hot dogs.
Yes.
But anyway, he said, we are not poor. So I always try to remember that. But these people were much poorer than we are. So, there's also a difference in poor.
But I wanna ask you something. How has that influenced you? Because I'm listening to you, and through a child's eyes, they cannot understand this because a child looks at things with innocence. They don't see color, they don't see size, anything. They don't have that mindset unless it is poured into them, that type of brainwashing and programming. But a child cannot understand, which is what was happening to you and many other children, I can imagine, at that time. What is the problem? They're humans, they look like me, or whatever. They might look a different color, but what is the problem? So I'm asking you, growing up in that era, well, you'll be 79 next week. Congratulations on that. 79 years ago. How has that influenced you today? I mean, you're alive, and I'm thankful to have you on my show at 79. In 2020, to be able to share that, how has that influenced your life that you have seen over the decades up to
Well, it did. It started, I was influenced when I was young, and my dad really couldn't appreciate this. Let me give you an example. When I left my home when I was 14 to go live with an older sister, lived in Nashville, Tennessee. And because my mother wanted me to go to a church-related Adventist academy there. And so I went over there, and we had, in the 10th grade, we had a black girl and a black boy, brother and sister, that came to our school. This was 1956. And this was extremely early for any kind of integration at all. And, I remember that whenever they were going to come to our school, the white kids found out about it. They said, oh, we're going to show those little ends what to do, so forth and so on. Well, when they got there, we found the little guy was as funny as could be. I mean, he had us laughing all the time, and we all learned to love. Fitzy was his name, Fitzy. And we love to learn learn to love his sister as well. And so I started realizing, what's this thing all about that I've been taught all my life? Here I am in close now with these people. I've never been close to a colored person before in my life, I mean, not that close. And here we were friends. But you know what? I didn't want to tell my daddy that I was going to school with a colored kid, because he would probably have had a fit. It was just because his son's on the road to hell right now. So see, the thing is, when it's ingrained into you, you don't hear anything else like my folks, and this is no excuse for them, because they should have. And my mother was starting to kind of understand somewhat about that she shouldn't be that way. But when it is ingrained into you that this is the way it is, and this is the way it is, and that whites are superior. We were not white supremacists like they are now. I don't mean that. We were just simply a whole society that felt that somehow or other we were better. And nobody knew why we were better. Well, I guess it's because God's white and we were white. At least that's the way they thought. And if you ever said to them, what color you think God really is? Well, has to be white, doesn't he? And he has to speak English, right? Because the Bible is written in English.
Yeah.
And I used to ask him a lot of questions about religion too, which drove my nuts. That's in my book too, about because I went to a religious church school, and so I would ask them many questions about, how it is that you believe in the creation theory, and you believe that there was a flood, and you believe Noah, got all the animals on the ark. What happened to the dinosaurs? Where were they? Well, they were too big to put on the boat. They told me. That's baloney. So I would drive a lot of people crazy, because I always had a lot of questions. But it has influenced me. I went on to teach college. I remember that my poor mother, she came to my graduation when I became a PhD, a doctor, and she said, "Now, Clyde, can you write me prescriptions now that you have your doctorate?" I said, "No, Mom, I can't." She said, "Why on earth would you go to school all these years and get a doctor's degree and not be able to write a prescription?" I said, "Mama, I don't think I could ever explain that to you." And in her simple sixth grade educated mind or what, she can never really understand that. Yeah. And I've had to actually ask myself sometimes, you went to school all those years. Maybe you should have gotten an MD degree.
But this is awesome. I need to have you back on the show. I want to hop across to your website. Just give me a minute to do that.
Okay.
I can feature your books. There we go.
Okay, there's Clyde McCulley. Yeah. If they go to ClydeMcCulley.com.
I'm already there. So I'm showing it. I'm showing it on the screen. And I see the boy on Shady Grove Road, Panther Creek Mountain, and you have a nice little series called Little Cuties.
Yeah, those, my wife and daughter did those, right?
And I actually see some black faces in there.
Yes. Well, let me tell you what's interesting about this, because I raised my daughters differently than I was raised.
I would hope so, Clyde. I would hope so.
Yes, I did. And my little daughter she's the illustrator of all these little books. My wife wrote them. And so you will find in these little books, you'll find, Oriental people, or whatever you want to call them now. You'll find Black people, you'll find Mexican people, you'll find all races. I don't think she did a rainbow child in there yet. But they're dressed up as the little cuties, and they're dressed up as, let's pretend that I'm an animal, let's pretend I'm a garden, vegetable, or fruit, let's pretend I'm in nature. And if you're going down, I think there's some more down below there. Pull down, maybe that. Okay. Yeah. Oh, I see. You'd have to go. But I also do some podcasts, if you notice up the top. And when you do the podcast, they are it's called Mama's White Gravy. And these are podcasts talking about the good old days back when things were simple. And my mother loved to make white gravy. And let me tell you, it wasn't for white gravy, I probably wouldn't have been able to grow, because we ate white gravy and biscuits so much of the time, because we were so doggone poor. And you can see how to get on those, because I've got probably 25 or 30 of those on there.
I see a lot of them here, Mama's White Gravy.
There's still even more that they can find, yes. But
And I see you have here, it may lead to a cookbook, a country cookbook on simple food, which I'm looking forward to.
I haven't gotten around to that yet. I know because, I love Southern food, black-eyed peas. Oh my
Oh
goodness.
yes, I've heard about the Southern food. Oh my word.
Yeah.
And having the family over, I've seen that culture, and
Yeah.
it's always talked about the Southern
Yeah.
living.
Yeah.
It's family oriented. Everybody comes over. There's a lot of food,
Yeah.
drink, merriment. Even though there was racism at the time, I think the Black family, that is what kept them together, because they realized that
Yeah.
they had to depend on themselves. It was survival of the fittest, and it made no sense fighting with each other,
That's exactly right.
which is what we need now. We need to stop fighting with each other. And I'm not saying that only for the Blacks, I'm saying that for all the races,
I agree with you.
mankind in total, mankind.
Mankind, that's right, exactly right.
Mankind, human
That's right.
beings. It has nothing to do with race or where you live or whatever.
Right.
We need to come back to that love of human beings and of mankind.
Mankind, that's right.
And to know that survival of the fittest is what it is, and we need to depend on each other, right? To help.
Oh, I agree. I totally agree. And I've learned so much that I look back and just think, how could I even been so stupid when I was a kid to not understand more than I did? But I tried, and finally I came along, and I enjoyed teaching college. And well, I guess, can I tell you one more quick?
Yeah.
I was teaching college in Texas, and I was teaching a life drawing class, a figure drawing class, and had a young girl, a black model that came in. Well, this was in the early 70s, right around 69, 70. Well, the Afro hair was just starting to come out that people were starting to wear Afros,
Yeah.
And so she came in one day with her hair all in an Afro. Well, all the white kids' class, there wasn't any black kids in my class, they were all whites. Well, 25 or 30 of them in my class, they were all drawing. Well, when they looked at her and saw that new hair, they thought, "Oh my God!" And they all started asking her questions about it. So then she said to them, this was very sweet of her. She said, "Would you all care to come up and feel my hair?" Well, they all were delighted. So they all got in line. And they came up and they wanted to put their hands just in her hair because they could not understand how.
Yeah.
So I thought, at least we're breaking down a little bit there.
No, it is interesting. A lot of folks tend to have an interest about our hair, and we have different textures of hair. We can have hair that looks like a white person. We can have very long, flowy, straight hair to very curly, thick hair.
I know.
We have a wide variety. That's the beauty about being Black. We are not standard. We are not what would you say, like a how would you say that? It's not a standard look to say this is how you expect a Black person.
Right.
Look. We can be in a room and each one of us is different.
Everybody.
The texture of your hair, the length of your hair, the color of your hair, everything about us, the color of your skin, the shape of your eyes, the color of our eyes can be different. We can be Black with gray eyes, brown eyes, blue eyes, green eyes.
And I've seen some, I don't know exactly how this happens, but I've seen some Black men with beautiful green eyes, just green. I don't know how that happens, but I think it's
genetics. It's genetic. That's how we are. It's in our genes. That's how we are. And people who are Black, that their eyes change color, like it will be greenish, grayish, hazel at some point. That is just how we are. We are unique like that. And this is why, we don't have inherently in us the ability. It's just not in our makeup to be racist. We can't. So when people are afraid of us or treat us, we are like, what? How is that possible? It boggles our mind. Why?
Right. I just must tell you one more real quick story. I was teaching college again in Texas, over in Dallas, Texas, and I had a young Black man in my class, and he and I got quite friendly with each other. And so one day he kind of stayed after class and we were chatting. And so we started talking a little bit about race relations and so forth. And so he said, "Why are you so afraid of us?" or something. I said, "Well, I'll tell you why I was always taught to be afraid of you. I thought you guys all had carried switchblade knives. Switchblades that you push the button and pops open." And so he said, "You mean like this?" He whipped out of his pocket this switchblade and boom, right there, he popped it and it came open right in front of me. And I said, "Whoa," I kind of went back and yeah, like that, he said. I said, he just kind of laughed, shot it, and put it back in his pocket. He said, well, we've all been taught that you guys all have guns. And he said, you white guys all carry guns. And he said, we're scared of you guys of your guns. You're scared of our switchblades. We're scared of your guns. I said, there's our problem right there, isn't it? We're all afraid of each other. So I've had some wonderful black students. I've had some wonderful white students. I've had some prejudice, both black and both white. And, you know, but we're all made in God's grace, we hope.
That's right. That's right. We're all in God's grace and image and likeness. And God doesn't have a color, just to let people know.
We're going to be surprised when we get there. We might find out he's multicolored. He may be the rainbow color.
I was just about to say he's a rainbow. When you look at the rainbow, you see. When you look at a rainbow, you see God. I mean, that's just what it is. When you look at a bird, a butterfly, it's not one color. When you look at the trees, it's never one color. I'm like, his creation reflects him. So for any one particular race to think it's above any other, it's ridiculous. You just need to look at creation. Just open your window and you're going to see God.
That's right. Well, you are fun to talk with. I've enjoyed your little chat so much together today, and I do hope that people will get my little book. I have a number of books, as you see there, but the book is fun to read. It's good reading for kids even in high school, to read about how a kid grew up in the South and had these kind of. But there's lots of other stories, not are just about segregation, but living in the woods and having fun.
Yeah, but people need to know this history, because a lot of what you're saying may not be written in books, and you are giving a live example. And I would love to spend more time with you to understand, because you see, the children of today in this century don't know, and it's what they have been told, just like with your parents, what they have been told. And we need to have people like you who have lived it, who have children, and who have taught your children, you know, differently. You haven't passed on that sort of ignorance of your parents of yesteryear. And that is where the change comes. You must recognize it and realize, I don't want my children to think like that. And they must say, I don't want my children, which is your grandchildren, to think like that, etc., etc.
That's right.
So the change happens with you. It starts with you. And the fact that you have your books is to be able to use to teach people about what happened then and what should be now, how we should move forward. It's not only a history book, but it should be a tool to bring about change in the mind, change in the thinking, change in, you know, in this whole segregation and separation and integration, whatever they want to call it. It's mankind.
Right, exactly.
Learn to love one another. Learn to love one another.
Pass the word.
Yeah, learn to love one another, because God is love, and he would be very upset to know this is what we are doing if he represents love. You're not representing God when you behave and think in this manner. That is not representative of God. Yes?
You're right.
I don't think the black birds are going to tell the white birds, you need to go over there.
You go on the other side of the fence, right?
Go on the other side. I don't think so. I don't think so. Okay, I don't think this tree is going to say, oh, pine tree, you need to stay away from oak tree. I don't think so.
That's right, exactly.
Okay, so if we look at how creation operates, we must take a little cue and a page from their book.
Okay, good. It's been sweet talking to you.
Yes, thank you so much, Clyde. I know we went over time, but I am definitely going to be in touch with you. We need to spend more time together, because this is something a message that we need to get out there. And I appreciate you for sharing. Thank you.
It's been delightful. Thank you very much.